The moment my mom said, "Your brother needs you to co-sign his car loan," and we already told him you would. I was standing in my kitchen holding a mug of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at the coffee, and I thought, they have no idea. My name is Wren. I'm 32 years old. I work in financial compliance for a mid-sized firm in Columbus, Ohio, and for most of my adult life, I have been the person my family calls when something needs to be fixed. Not because I'm the oldest. My brother Derek is 4 years older than me. But because I'm the one who picks up the phone, the one who shows up, the one who apparently has her life together enough to be a resource. Derek is 36. He's smart, actually. Genuinely smart, could have done anything. But somewhere around 25, he figured out that if he waited long enough, someone else would handle things. And that someone, 9 times out of 10, was me. It started small, the way it always does. When he got his first apartment at 23, our parents asked me to lend him the security deposit. Just until he gets his first paycheck, my mom said. I had $400 in my checking account and I gave him $250 of it. He never paid it back. When I brought it up once, gently, he said he didn't remember it being a loan. My mom backed him up. We're family, Wren. We don't keep score. I kept score. Quietly. In the notes app on my phone, I still have somewhere. Over the years, it added up in ways that are almost embarrassing to say out loud. Co-paying his cell phone plan for 18 months because he needed to get back on his feet after a breakup. Covering his half of a family vacation to Myrtle Beach because my parents said it wouldn't be the same without him and he couldn't afford it. Helping him draft his resume 3 different times for 3 different career pivots. Once, I drove 2.5 hours to Dayton on a Tuesday night because he'd locked his keys in his car and couldn't afford a locksmith. I had work at 7 the next morning. None of this was ever framed as a favor. It was always framed as what family does. My parents are good people in a lot of ways. They worked hard. They were present when we were kids. They didn't drink or fight or any of the things that would make this a more dramatic story. But they had a blind spot with Derek the size of Lake Erie, and they never once saw it. I want to be fair. Derek isn't mean. He's not cruel. He's just comfortable. Comfortable with the idea that someone will catch him, that the net will always be there. And for 36 years it has been. Last year things shifted. Not because of one big thing, but because of an accumulation of small things that finally reached a tipping point inside me somewhere around October. I'd just gotten a promotion. It was a real one, with a meaningful salary increase, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt like I had actual breathing room. I didn't tell my family right away. Not because I was hiding it, but because I'd learned, over years of experience, that good news in my life had a way of becoming a line item in someone else's budget. I should have kept that instinct. Instead, I mentioned it at Thanksgiving. Casually. My mom asked how work was going, and I said, genuinely happy. Really good, actually. I got promoted in October. She hugged me. My dad clapped me on the shoulder. Derek said, nice, that's awesome, and went back to his phone. 3 weeks later, my mom called. Your father and I have been thinking, she said. Which is always how it starts. Derek's been having a really hard time with his car. It's a 2012, and it keeps breaking down, and he found a used one he likes, a 2019 Honda. Really reasonable, but the dealer says his credit score isn't high enough to qualify on his own. We thought, since you just got your promotion and your credit is good, I asked her to stop right there. Mom, you want me to co-sign a car loan for Derek? Just to get him approved. You wouldn't actually have to pay anything. I want to pause here and explain something, because I work in financial compliance and this is not a small ask. Co-signing a loan means that if the primary borrower defaults, for any reason, job loss, emergency, general irresponsibility, the debt falls on the co-signer. It shows up on your credit. It affects your debt-to-income ratio. It can prevent you from getting your own mortgage, your own car loan, your own line of credit. And the primary borrower doesn't have to do anything wrong necessarily. They can just stop paying, and suddenly it's your problem. Derek had defaulted on a credit card in 2019. I knew this because my mom had called me then too, asking if I could help him pay the balance to prevent it from going to collections. I'd said no that time. One of the few times I'd said no, she hadn't spoken to me normally for about 3 weeks after. "Mom," I said, "I can't co-sign a loan for Derek. If he can't get approved on his own, that means the bank has already assessed the risk. I would be absorbing that risk. You wouldn't have to pay anything unless he stops paying, which is a real possibility." There was a silence. Then, "Wren, he's your brother." I said I needed to think about it and I'd call her back. I didn't call her back. I went to work, came home, made dinner, and thought about it for 4 days. I thought about the $250 I'd given him when I had $400 to my name. I thought about Myrtle Beach. I thought about the Tuesday night drive to Dayton. I thought about the credit card in 2019 and my mum's 3 weeks of cold silence. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I talked to someone outside my family. My coworker and close friend Angie had heard bits and pieces of the Derek situation over the years. I told her the full version over lunch one Thursday, and she listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. And then she said, "Wren, has it ever occurred to you that you're not actually obligated to do any of this?" I laughed, kind of. "I know I'm not obligated." "No," she said, "I don't think you do. Because if you knew you weren't obligated, you wouldn't keep doing it." That hit differently than I expected. I went home that night and I pulled up my credit report. It was good, really good. I'd worked for years to keep it clean, paid everything on time, kept my utilization low. It was genuinely one of the things I was proud of. And I thought about what it would look like in 18 months if Derek's payments started slipping. I thought about the house I'd been quietly saving for, the down payment sitting in a high-yield savings account, the pre-approval I'd been planning to pursue in the spring. I called my mom back on a Friday evening. I told her I thought it over and I couldn't co-sign the loan. I kept it simple. I didn't explain my whole financial reasoning or bring up the past. I just said, "I'm not able to do that, Mom. Derek needs to work on his credit and find a lender that will work with him where he is." My mom said, "I'm very disappointed in you. Not in Derek for having bad credit at 36. In me for declining to absorb the consequences." I said, "I understand," and I meant it. I understood her perfectly. My dad called the next morning. He was gentler about it, but the message was the same. "Derek really needs this car to get to work, Wren. What if he loses his job over this?" I wanted to point out that Derek had always found a way to get to work before, that he'd been creative about transportation when he needed to be, that this was not actually an emergency. I didn't say any of that. I just said I'd made my decision and I wasn't going to change it. Then Derek called. He didn't ask, he assumed. That was the thing that finally crystallized something in me. It didn't say, "Hey, I know this is a big ask and I really appreciate you considering it." He said, "So Mom said you're going to help me with the car thing," like it was already settled. Like I was a step in a process he'd already mapped out. I said, "Derek, I'm not co-signing the loan." There was a pause. "Seriously?" "Yes. Wren, I need this car." "I know you do. But co-signing isn't something I'm able to do." "Why not? You just got promoted. It's not like you can't afford it. It's not like you can't afford it." And there it was, the promotion. The thing I'd mentioned at Thanksgiving without thinking. The thing that had, exactly as I'd feared, become a line item. "Affording it isn't the issue," I said. "The risk is the issue. If you stop paying, it becomes my debt. I'm not going to stop paying. Derek, you defaulted on a credit card 5 years ago." Silence. Long enough that I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "That was different," he said finally. "I'm sure it felt that way." My answer is still no. He hung up. Not dramatically, he just said fine and ended the call. Which was somehow worse than dramatic. It meant he wasn't surprised. He was just moving on to the next option, whatever that was. What I didn't tell any of them, not my mom, not my dad, not Derek, was that 3 months earlier, in September, I had quietly done something they didn't know about. I'd removed Derek as an authorized user from the one credit card we'd shared years ago when I'd added him as a favor to help him build credit. He hadn't used it in over a year, and keeping him on it was benefiting his score without any effort on his part. After the Thanksgiving dinner, after I'd seen the way my mom's eyes had lit up a little when I mentioned the promotion, I had a feeling. I can't explain it better than that, just a feeling. So, I made a call to the card issuer and had him removed. I also, in January, pulled my full credit report and put a security freeze on it with all 3 bureaus. Not because I thought my family would do anything underhanded. I didn't believe that. But because I wanted a clear record. Because I worked in compliance and I knew what documentation looked like. Because I was done being a resource and starting to be a person with her own financial future to protect. When Derek was denied for the car loan without a cosigner, he went back to the dealer and tried again with my parents as cosigners. They declined, citing their fixed income on the retirement. And then, a few weeks after my phone calls with them, my mom tried a different approach. She invited me to a family dinner. Not Sunday lunch, a Saturday dinner, which was unusual. She said she was making pot roast, which is my favorite, and that she just wanted to see me. She sounded warm and normal on the phone. I told myself I was being paranoid. I went. My dad was there, and Derek, and Derek's girlfriend at the time, a woman named Terry who I'd met twice before and who seemed nice in that way of someone who hasn't figured out yet what she's gotten into. It was pleasant for about 45 minutes. Good food, normal conversation. I let myself relax. Then my mom cleared the plates and my dad said, "So Wren, we've been thinking about this car situation." I put my fork down. "We were thinking," he continued, "that maybe instead of co-signing, you could just take out a small personal loan yourself and give the money to Derek to buy the car outright. He'd pay you back monthly, keep it in the family." I looked at my dad, then at my mom, then at Derek, who was looking at the table. So instead of co-signing a loan, I said slowly, "You want me to take out a loan myself, give Derek the money, and trust that he'll pay me back." "It keeps it simple," my mom said. "No bank involved between you two." "Dad," I said, "there's always a bank involved. The only difference is whose name is on the account. You'd be helping your brother." "I understand that's how it looks." "What is the matter with you?" my mum said, and her voice had changed. Not loud. My mom doesn't get loud, but flat, like a door closing. "Do you know how hard it is to watch your son struggle when his sister is sitting there with a promotion and good credit? And that's mine," I said. "My credit, my promotion. I worked for those things. And Derek is working too. He's trying." "Mom." I kept my voice steady. "I love you. I love Derek. But I am not a financial instrument for this family. I have my own plans. I have things I'm saving for. I have my own plans. I have things I'm saving for. I have a future that I need to protect." "What plans?" she said. "What are you saving for?" And here is the moment I wish I had held back. I don't know why I said it. Maybe because I was tired of being treated like someone without a life outside of their obligations to other people. Maybe because I wanted, just once, to say, "I exist. I have things happening. I'm buying a house." I said, "I've been saving for 2 years. I have my pre-approval. I'm under contract." The silence at that table was unlike any silence I've sat in before. My mom set down her glass. "You buying a house?" "Yes, and you couldn't help your brother with a car. Those two things are not in competition with each other. My down payment is not Derek's car money. Do you know what a house costs in Columbus right now?" Derek said, and now he looked up. "You've got enough for a down payment, and you can't throw me a few thousand for a car." "Derek, I'm not throwing anyone anything. That money took me 2 years to save. It's going towards something that will build my future." "Oh, and my future doesn't matter." "That is not what I said." Terry was looking at the wall. My dad was looking at his hands. My mom stood up and started doing dishes, which, in our family, is the equivalent of ending a conversation by setting it on fire. I stayed for another 15 minutes out of some residual sense of obligation, and then I said I had an early morning and I left. Derek didn't look at me when I said goodbye. My dad walked me to the door and squeezed my shoulder and said, "She'll come around." And I didn't ask him which she he meant. The closing on my house was in March. I didn't tell my family the exact date. I told them afterward a few days later, and my mum said, "Congratulations," in a tone that meant something else entirely. Derek sent a thumbs-up emoji in the family group chat and nothing else. I moved in on a Saturday with help from Angie and 2 other friends. We ate pizza on the floor of the empty living room because I didn't have a couch yet. Angie raised her can of soda and said, "To Wren's house, where nobody gets to co-sign anything." I laughed so hard I spilled mine. Things with my family are complicated right now. I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. My mum and I talk maybe once a week, and it's cordial, and sometimes it feels like the conversation we're having isn't the real one. Derek found a car eventually. I don't know the details. I didn't ask. He's still with Terry. I hope she's happy. I hope he's trying, in whatever way is real for him. But here's what I know now that I didn't let myself know for a long time. Love isn't the same thing as access. Caring about your family doesn't mean your credit score belongs to them. It doesn't mean your savings account is a communal resource. It doesn't mean that every good thing you build for yourself is an opportunity someone else can leverage. I have a house now. It's a 3-bedroom colonial in a neighborhood with good walkability and a Trader Joe's 8 minutes away. The previous owners left a peony bush in the backyard that bloomed in May. Pink and ridiculous and perfect. I stood in my kitchen the first morning I woke up there and drank my coffee while it was still hot. That was the first time in a long time I could say that. I keep thinking about that peony bush in the backyard. I didn't plant it. I didn't earn it in any dramatic sense. It was just there, left by the previous owners, and it bloomed anyway, pink and a little ridiculous and completely unbothered by anything that had happened before it arrived. There's something in that I'm still sitting with. For a long time, I told myself the things I did for my family came from love, and I think that was partially true. But looking back honestly, the way you can only look back once you've put some distance between yourself and the story, a lot of it came from fear. Fear of the silence my mom went cold with, fear of being the one who broke something, fear that saying no meant I didn't love them enough, or that I was selfish, or that I was the problem. I spent years making financial decisions based on that fear, and I dressed it up as generosity so I didn't have to look at what it actually was. What changed wasn't a single moment. It was more like a slow accumulation of clarity. The kind that builds when you finally stop explaining yourself and start paying attention to what's actually in front of you. Derek wasn't struggling because of bad luck. He was comfortable because the net had always been there, and I had been part of that net for so long that removing myself felt like a betrayal. But here's what I had to reckon with. Keeping the net in place wasn't kindness. It was avoidance. Real care. The kind that actually helps someone. Sometimes looks like letting a person face what they've been avoiding. I'm not saying I handled everything perfectly. I told my family about the promotion at Thanksgiving, and I knew better. I told them about the house at that dinner, and part of me wanted them to see me, actually see me, as someone with her own life and her own future. That impulse cost me a hard night and a few weeks of tense phone calls. But I learned something from it. The desire to be witnessed by people who aren't ready to witness you is its own kind of trap. What I built, the credit score, the savings, the pre-approval, the house, came from a specific kind of discipline that isn't glamorous. It's the discipline of deciding quietly and repeatedly over years that your future is worth protecting even when no one is watching and no one is applauding. Angie asked me once if I felt guilty. I told her the truth. Sometimes, yes. Guilt is information. It tells you where your values are. But guilt isn't a reason to hand someone a loan they haven't earned, or sign your name to a debt that isn't yours, or hollow out your own foundation so someone else has somewhere to stand. Derek will figure it out, or he won't. That's the honest answer, and it took me a long time to hold it without flinching. I can love my brother and also understand that I cannot want his growth more than he does. Those two things coexist now. They live in the same house, so to speak. The morning after I moved in, I stood in my kitchen with hot coffee and no agenda, and I thought, this is what I was protecting. Not just a down payment, not just a credit score. This, the quiet, the space, the feeling of having built something that belongs to no one but me. That's worth something. I think it's worth almost everything.